When I was in the Army in Germany years ago, I drove a truck with 5 men inside an M101 howitzer artillery gun attached to the rear of the truck. We traveled during a pitch-dark night with no lights used. We could only see the tail light of the vehicle in front. That was enough light to follow. Keep in mind, there may not be enough time left for your students and new brothers and sisters to learn all that you know. Feed them, not a heavy meal of steak and baked potatoes, but an appetizer to stimulate the juices in the mouth. Any day now, nations will cause the peoples who are looking to them for guidance to think they have finally established peace. The need for peace is already being talked about by national leaders. We're not fooled by this sham cry of peace and security. 1 Thessalonians 5:3 says, whenever it is that they are saying peace and security, then sudden destruction is to be instantly on them, just like birth pains on a pregnant woman, and they will by no means escape. Jehovah will have the political powers of this world turn against Babylon the Great. That's false religion. After they see the handwriting on the wall for her and destroy her. Sudden destruction, instantly. It won't take long. Her supporters will cry out weeping and mourning and say, too bad, too bad. But we will be thinking, I'm glad, I'm glad. Are you ready to be glad over her destruction? I think you are. But I can't make that determination. We will know if we were ready as Jehovah protects us when the nations turn their guns on us.
Wow, he's really performing for us in this talk, isn't he, old Sammy? So we are watching Samuel Hurd of the governing body speaking at the 152nd Gilead Graduation, his theme, Any Day Now. And as we've just heard, Samuel Hurd explicitly say the Great Tribulation or prelude to Armageddon will come, as the title of the talk suggests, any day now.
Any day now, nations will cause the peoples who are looking to them for guidance to think they have finally established peace.
Any day now. Thanks for being so specific, Sammy. Thanks for really taking a risk there and making a claim that can easily be debunked if it turns out to be untrue. This is just utter, open, brazen charlatanry, isn't it? Total snake oil salesman stuff at this point. He cannot be held to these words. He's even at an age where he could die in maybe the next couple of years, and no one's going to hold him to these words or be able to hold him to these words. And even though he is speaking as a governing body member, as part of God's channel, the faithful slave, you can bet that decades from now, when activists are showing this footage to show how this organization has been using this doomsday rhetoric for decades, you can bet Jehovah's Witnesses will be saying, oh, well, that was just Brother Hurd getting a little bit carried away. We know what old Sammy was like. he'd get a bit worked up. That doesn't mean the organization isn't true. They just get away with it time and time again. And what a bizarre rant about Babylon the Great and its supporters.
Her supporters will cry out weeping and mourning and say, "Too bad, too bad." But we will be thinking, "I'm glad, I'm glad."
Yeah, wow. Comedy gold there from Sammy. Again, I just cannot escape this thought of it being canned laughter. I can't prove it. It's just speculation. I could be wrong. But I really, really struggle with the idea of people genuinely laughing at what is, let's face it, a monstrosity. This is someone who is not growing old gracefully. You know, this is like the embarrassing grandparent who's maybe had a little bit too much wine and is mouthing off a little bit to everyone's amusement. He is just speaking utter tosh, isn't he, at this point? And he does this weird whiny voice frequently now in his talks. Whenever he is, in fact, he did it in this talk previously at this particular Gilead graduation, where he was impersonating a Gilead graduate who was saying, they taught us this at Gilead, or they taught us that, or a governing body member told us this. He puts on this whiny voice to demean, to mock almost. And here he's mocking people who are in any other religion than the one that he happens to be a leader in. But it all amounts, again, to doomsday fear-mongering. And Samuel Hurd is so into this apocalyptic narrative that he's even talking here about Jehovah's Witnesses facing the prospect of having guns pointed at them.
We will know if we were ready as Jehovah protects us when the nations turn their guns on us.
Yeah, that's totally going to happen. The nations are going to turn their guns on Jehovah's Witnesses. Maybe Tibor can overlay the infamous artwork which you can find in the Pure Worship book, which actually features Sam Hurd. So it's a situation room during the Great Tribulation. And the leaders of, quote unquote, the nations, maybe this is in the Pentagon, maybe the White House, who knows? Maybe it's in Whitehall. They have a number of screens on the wall. And on one of those screens, if you look carefully, you can see Sam Hurd presenting JW Broadcasting. So this is something that we can seriously expect to happen, that Jehovah's Witnesses will be such a big deal in the eyes of the nations that they will be the subject of fear and paranoia at national defense level. That's what Jehovah's Witnesses are here being told to expect. And isn't the fear-mongering palpable when he's even going so far as to say, get ready to have a gun pointed at you? What does it say about an organization that needs to terrify its members in this way? That needs to terrify children who will be watching this talk with the thought of guns being pointed at them by the nations? And speaking of guns, what was that nonsense where Samuel Hurd was giving us his stories of being a soldier? He didn't fight in any wars, by the way. He served for a period in post-war Germany following World War II. He was in the army and he served for a period in Germany. And for some reason, we need to know that in his military convoy, all he needed to say was, I was in a military convoy. For some reason, we've got to know that he was towing an M101 howitzer.
I drove a truck with 5 men inside an M101 howitzer artillery gun attached to the rear of the truck.
So the audience at the Gilead graduation really needs to know what sort of gun Sammy was towing in this convoy. They need to know it was an M101 howitzer, apparently, for his wise words to drive home, for his words to have impact. I would argue that if you remove the M101 howitzer from his boring and tedious anecdote, it still works. I was in the army and I was in a convoy, and we had to follow each other's taillights, whatever he said. There's no point at all for that particular detail, in my view, other than to impress people, to show what a bad boy Sammy once was in his former life. As far as I'm concerned, the governing body are not just deluded in their doomsday ramblings, but the more they talk, the more they give us their anecdotes, the more obvious it is that these people love themselves.
The day for salvation will be closed any day now. When Noah had gathered all the creatures that Jehovah had designated, along with all necessary food needed for all in the ark, they went into the ark. Note it was Jehovah that closed the door, not Noah. Genesis 7:16 says, "So they went in, male and female of every sort of flesh, just as God had commanded him. After that, Jehovah shut the door behind him." We don't take it upon ourselves to close the door to salvation. Jehovah shuts the door, and we can't push it open to let Mom or anyone else in. You Gileadites are professional preachers and teachers. You have received training that not many of your brothers and sisters will have the privilege to receive this side of Armageddon. Yes, without a doubt, you are wiser now than you used to be, but not as wise as Jesus was when he said, "What I teach is not mine, but belongs to him who sent me." John 7:16. We believe Jehovah sent you to Gilead. Keep foremost in mind that what you teach belongs to Jehovah, and conduct yourselves in a manner that displays that. Let your light shine, not too bright, just a flicker as needed before night falls, any day now.
Thus concludes Samuel Hurd's talk at the 152nd Gilead Graduation, an overtly doomsday talk. It literally has the theme, any day now, and several times in his talk, he suggests that the Great Tribulation is coming any day now. Again, this is not a claim that he can be held to. This is an unfalsifiable claim. And when you're in an organization that makes unfalsifiable claims, what you have is a plethora of red flags. If your leaders are going to make claims, they need to be claims that can be disproven in some way. If they're making vague claims, if they're constantly hedging their words, chances are they're trying to pull the wool over your eyes. So thank you, Sam, or Sammy, or whatever, for giving us abundant evidence of how manipulative the governing body are when they have a microphone in front of them and have a doting audience who will lap up their every word. And in this instance, their every word includes this chilling reminder about the fate of unbelieving relatives when Armageddon strikes.
We don't take it upon ourselves to close the door to salvation. Jehovah shuts the door, and we can't push it open to let Mom or anyone else in.
What's the relevance of that? It's like with the M101 howitzer. You can remove that from the talk, and the talk still has the same substance. He's trying to stir his audience into an apocalyptic frenzy and believe that the Great Tribulation is going to strike any day now. And for some reason, in his muddled mind, he absolutely needs to weave in this narrative of your mother potentially dying if your mother happens to be unbelieving or your mother happens to be disfellowshipped. My question would be why? You know, this is something that Jehovah's Witnesses are already grappling with. It's a fear many in the audience already have. Why do you need to say that? For me, Samuel Hurd is not just deluded and a foolish old man who's getting seemingly more senile and more eccentric with every passing day or with every passing appearance on our screens. He's also evil, because this, again, is going above and beyond in the manipulation. He is reminding his audience that they need to toe the line because the end is coming any day now, and once the door of salvation shuts, there will be no reopening it. There will be no salvation, even for your mother, if she happens to not be a believer.